Richard, and I'm in the dual master's program here at UW with geography and environment and natural resource sciences. Pulling those into my thesis, I picked the subject of cultural ecology, which is really the study just that of humanity and how we are shaped by our environment and how ultimately perhaps our culture, then in response to that, we develop a culture that ultimately maybe shapes our environment. The title of my thesis is The Cultural Ecology of the Trueque Chilote, which is a barter exchange system of wood for potatoes in northern Patagonia. The three core elements to my research was looking at using semi-structured interviews, site visits, and then incorporating some remote sensing and some GIS technology. In the back of my mind, there was a story that some of the locals had shared with me over several mate sessions. One rarely drinks mate alone. You always drink it with others, and you sit around and you tell stories. Some folks were telling me about how they had traditionally sailed back and forth between the mainland, which is where I was living, which is actually the more remote or undeveloped part of northern Patagonia, and the islands of Chiloé, which is where this Chilote culture, which is what this region identifies itself with culturally, is the historically more longer inhabited region of northern Patagonia. Arguably as old as 8,000 years ago, there's been cultures moving through the islands and trading, as well as having some semi-permanent settlements through these fjords and things. Islands of Chiloé are one of the origins of domestication for the potato in the world. The other one is further north in the Andes in Peru and Bolivia. Or 99% of potatoes that we consume today around the world are of Chilote origin. And so I thought that was fascinating because the culture, the Chilote culture, in this sense, by the potatoes, the forest, and the seas. That's sort of the trifecta for them of what is their existence, what is their culture, and what is their sense of place. And so they have traditionally been mariners, originally from dugout canoes that they would paddle through the fjords and collect shellfish, and then also working with the forest for all of their medicinal needs, as well as their construction needs, as well as their transport in the sense of the boats. And then the potato being the only domestic crop down there that they live exclusively on. The wonderful thing about the potato is it has an enormous lifespan. I haven't really had these blights because they didn't practice monoculture. They had this diversity, like the diversity of the landscape there, same and it was reflected in their potatoes. How did they get their potatoes? Because this is still virgin forest and there's not many cleared areas. It explained to me that they trade these things, and that's what they traditionally. How is it able for a barter exchange that is free of any monetary influence still able to persist? And what are the effects of this trade system on the ecological dynamics that are going on there? The forests and the islands was just so obvious for me for this, because I wanted to look at the hard science of what is the productivity of these forests in relationship to the populations that are living there. Are they living within, first of all, carrying capacity of what these forests can provide for them? Because they've been doing it for thousands of years, so something seems to be working. They're horticulturalists in the sense that all of their labor is done by hand, but there's no machinery involved in that. If a few of them that are a bit more well off, or maybe have a little bit more access to land for productivity, maybe use an ox, but that's it. Otherwise everything's on your shoulder or in your arms. My purpose is more as a cultural ecologist is to just acknowledge the relationship and the intimacy of the existence of these crops, the potatoes, and the existence of this unique culture, and how do they depend and relate to each other. Rolling hill country that it was described to me, where they had so few trees that they couldn't keep their animals off of their potato crops, so they would actually have to leash them up to maybe one stake, and the animals would wander around this one stake like a dog on a leash because they couldn't fence them in, and that's why they needed the wood, was to make fences with. And so they would trade for these stakes, and I did find that there was sort of a standard exchange rate, and that was depending on the species of tree, different species last longer than others once stuck into the ground. Typical one was a tree called tepu, which would last about 10 years as a fence post once in the ground. And if you had 10 of those 6-foot posts, that would give you one 50-kilo bag, or about a 100-pound bag of potatoes. In the positive sense that fortunately the barter system is alive and well still, at least to this day, and that my part of that work unfinished is hoping to share this unique dynamic that exists in this little corner of the world that is still very little known, and hopefully to make it a little bit more known to people, not only for what it represents to humanity, what it represents for people in our relationship with the environment, but also for what may be some keys or clues or insights that these people can offer to us in how to make the choices that we are continuing to make every day.